Okay.
Okay, so I will call the meeting to order, the Subcommittee on Library Accessibility. That's at least what I wrote down. November 19th at 5:15 p.m. It looks really much darker outside. Okay, so this is the agenda. Review of needs for library accessibility, review email from Mass Office of Disabilities on paved area, review existing plans to see if portions are usable, and next steps for working with an architect. So the first thing would be review of the needs. And so there were basically three. I can let you answer if you want, Justin, but we started.
I am just pulling up the website because I revamped the website, and one of the things that I completely redid was the accessibility and renovation project.
Okay.
Part of it. And it has the exact wording is given to me by the MOD folk. An entrance to the building that is accessible, code compliant, paved parking connected to the accessible entrance, an elevator to provide access to both floors, and an accessible public restroom. Those are the four needs.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get all those.
Yeah, say those again, Justin.
An entrance to the building that is accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Code compliant paved parking connected to the accessible entrance. And I can email you this if you want.
Okay.
An elevator that provides access to both floors. And an accessible public restroom.
Okay.
So those are requirements for the MOBD.
Yeah, or the MOD, Massachusetts Office on Disabilities. I chatted with the person who sent the email, Jakira, I believe was her name.
Yep.
And we chatted for about an hour about potential grant opportunities and proposals and how this all could work. And, at first she was of the opinion that, what you should do is submit multiple grant applications in parallel with each other. So like an application for an entrance, an application for parking, an application for the restroom, and then see if you can get one or more approved. But then as we started talking deeper about it, and it became apparent how unaccessible the building is, she kind of backtracked on that and said that it did need to be kind of an all or nothing plan, because addressing one need without all the others is pointless. And if you build your parking lot and funding never materializes for your accessible entrance, what do you have the parking lot for? By the time you get to the next phase in the project, your parking lot might need to be replaced, And I think that's where Bill was coming from earlier too, is...
Well, it's kind of like a slippery slope. Once you pave the parking lot, then you trigger some bylaw requirements that require some groundwater recharge. So if you're removing stormwater that's currently going into the ground and recharging the aquifer, which this site lies within, we have an aquifer bylaw that says if you make impervious a certain percentage of the lot area that the building sits on, which we would trigger that threshold, you have to have an active stormwater infiltration system in your ground. That's why when you go downtown, you'll see a number of these parking areas, including the library, that's crushed gravel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why. So,
and this plan had all that already taken care of, didn't it?
This had the design done, correct. So it sounds like one of the threshold requirements is you're paving the parking lot, therefore now you need a stormwater management system too.
Well, I thought when you talked to Jakira, she didn't necessarily need to pave the whole thing.
No, she said that we could get away with just paving the accessible parts of the parking lot. And I think that the most recent revision of the plans by Van Hoorhus, which we used to apply for the grant round 3 years ago, had that just pavement coming in, 2 spots paved, accessible, and then nothing on the rest of it.
Do you know if it was looked at if they trigger the bylaw with just that amount of paving?
I have no idea.
Because, that's something that's probably should be thought about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those were very
Yeah.
preliminary sketches that we just put together for the grant application round to show that we had a direction we were wanting to go in.
Right. So I guess who could answer that question about the groundwater? Is that, do we start with Jakira at the Mass Office on
We
Disability?
would need to know the percent impervious that we're looking at. So if
Okay.
it's a sidewalk from the road plus, a paved driveway and 2 paved parking spots, I'm not sure what you have in mind. But if it's, we'd need to quantify that in order to determine the percent impervious created on the site.
So I think we said 14. Is there a general law, like what percentage you need for accessible parking spots? Because like, in a
Yes.
giant, supermarket or something, there's a lot of spots, right? But we're talking 14, I think
The
14 is
trigger
number.
for having to provide handicap accessible spots is 1 more than the number of spots we provide.
Okay. But because we're making an accessible thing, we still need to find, there's no number, it just means there's no number of spots that we
14
need.
or 15, I think it is.
Okay, but there's no number of handicap spots that we need, we just need it to be accessible for a wheelchair going into the elevator.
That I'm not sure of. I think there has to be at least 2.
I think you need a van accessible spot plus a regular spot.
Okay.
I think that's usually what I see.
Okay.
Now, I'm no expert on ADA accessibility, but
We have a lot of information here.
With y'all here and y'all here, I kind of, well, you have the agenda, so I'm sorry. I'm just going to,
But yeah, that's okay, it's a very loose agenda, that's what we're talking about, review of needs for library accessibility, so, continue.
well, what's next on the agenda?
Oh, then it's review the email from the Mass Office on Disability regarding the paved area.
Yeah, okay.
So this is the email that I thought I at one point sent to everybody, but not recently.
Yeah, I think that
But we
would
probably have
come up
more
later
recent
at the,
information than that
paid
anyway,
parking.
from what you learned.
The addition that you had drawn recently. That's not much different than what this addition is it? Other than the location of it.
It's significantly less.
that's what it looks like, yeah.
Which
It
page are you
moves
looking
it
at?
to the side,
Yeah, it moves it to the
and
side.
it's not as big.
Yeah, it goes in a completely different door, right?
Right, so generally, it's about the same thing, just a different location. So,
And a lot of it, this is stripped away. I mean, there's a lot in here that,
no, I understand that, but I'm just trying to take it in small bites to start with. So for the addition portion of it with the set of stairs and the elevator, it looks like it was drawn to scale that, so you could move around in there. So it's not, you could probably shrink it a little bit, but I don't think you gotta shrink it that much. Because if the stairs are gonna come around like that, the loop around, the way they have them.
His weren't going to loop around. His
Here.
where you were going to step into it, and then there was going to be, instead of like a sideways loop around, you were able to go down or up based on just that landing coming in.
Yep.
Instead of like a U, it was more like just a straight parallel.
Just a straight shot in?
Yeah.
Okay. So, with that being said, you can use, probably the width of this will work, you just have to slide it over. But if you look at, now on his, did the elevator exit into the meeting room, or did it exit into the landing? See how this one here comes out into that addition?
It came out into the landing. So you'd have that
On the
entry
other one,
landing there.
on the other one that,
Are you talking about these that we're looking at right now?
I know what this is, I can see it.
Okay.
That little plan that, right there, this thing here. We have the floor plan of that one?
I don't think there was a floor plan.
There's they're two-sided in some cases.
So this is the elevator? Justin?
I need a projector.
Right here.
I know.
Yeah, so you would come in
We
this
actually
way,
can get it up here.
and since the
And how-
elevator's over
how
on
would
the
we-
side of the building instead of in
Do
the
you know how
middle,
to
Right.
get
it
the
would be
TV
coming into
on?
that basement programming room,
Right.
and then upstairs will be coming into like that, where we have children's
Yeah,
collections
so,
right now.
yeah, so the elevator's gonna exit into the room, not into the,
Right, where
into
did I
the
just put
outside.
that?
Yep.
Screen mirroring?
Well, no, how's that work?
Do you want to do that?
Can't do that. Because when you come into the elevator, you're gonna have to come in from the landing into this.
His elevator was going to have doors on two
It
sides.
does go out into the, it's the same way as this one. It's right here. So it has two different ways that you go in and out.
Yep, so you would go into the elevator. His elevator idea had two doors.
Correct.
So you would come into it from the landing that's halfway between the two floors,
Right.
but then the egress from it would be straight out onto the floors rather than on any sort of landing. So you would only have a landing in the addition on that split level instead of on both. That makes sense?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, so this one actually doesn't work, does it? How's the grading on that?
You're on Susan's first floor plan. So, someone who needed handicapped access would need to get in an elevator no matter what, because they're in
Yes.
between floors.
Because the entrance would come off the current grade from the outside, which is between the two floors.
Right, right.
And then they'd have to either take the elevator up to get to the main floor or down
Get into
to
the
get to the
children's.
basement.
Okay.
So what is the width on there? 22 by
17.
So what would they,
17?
Yeah.
Oh, 17, right.
they would do it, I couldn't do it. But you're below grade.
It's a retaining wall. That's a retaining wall.
I feel like we should be the smaller too.
Oh,
I know.
retaining.
Yeah.
So they're gonna,
I'm gonna move over there.
Yeah, if we just all move.
Yeah, we'll just squish together.
I'm just trying to get my head around how you actually enter into this particular addition here.
Well, you have the actual floor plan on your computer,
Yes.
right?
Well, you guys have it too.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not talking about this one. I'm trying to understand this,
Oh, this one?
this original one. So, and that's what I'm looking at.
Right.
You got-
Okay, I got you.
Aesthetically, yeah, it somewhat matches.
So there should be a site plan.
Here, why don't you sit here, because you've got the computer. I'll move over here.
Existing conditions. Site plan. That's the Ds. I need contours.
He's bringing in the sideways.
They're being engineering.
I know. They've lost us.
405, what's the basement elevation? 412,
No, basement's 403.
403,
And they're at 402, they're bottom of curve.
okay. So they were putting a retaining wall all the way in across there,
That's what it looks like, yeah.
yeah.
Is that needed?
Not for this plan, right?
Well, I'm just wondering if you can use, kind of marry these two together. That you come in, and then the elevator would drop a half a flight or go up a half a flight. It doesn't have to go a full flight of stairs.
Wasn't that
If
the
I'm not
point of
mistaken,
these?
this looks like it's got the slanted roof. It looks much smaller. I don't know if that makes, how much that makes of a difference in the cost of everything. It's
Well,
necessary.
I think the different, well, there's a number of things, I think. From the cost you've seen from this, I don't think included, prevailing wages and, municipal pricing.
Right.
So I think that's one issue. The other difference is this is a wood frame structure, whereas this is a structure that's consistent with the style of the rest of the building.
Right, which long-term is gonna be less maintenance. This is gonna require maintenance every 5 to 7 years. We're in the middle of that now with the post office. But if you just use this elevation, right,
Oh, there you go.
Why? What does it
Yeah.
say?
no, it shows the wall that we just went through.
Oh.
But if you use this elevation to see what it's gonna look like on how it marries into the building from the grade. Now, if you came in the door and that elevator went a half a floor up and a half a floor down, you got a lot of costs just creating all this
Savings,
stuff.
yeah,
here.
savings, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this matches the building. It all starts to blend
Yeah.
together. This is obviously gonna shift down this way, but I don't see any reason to create, there's a lot of site work on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the retaining wall that's out there now, which,
Yeah.
Which has
there's
been moved
cost
since those
associated
plans were
with dealing
done.
with that,
So that's one consideration, so, and I'm just looking at this as, if I was gonna do a job, how would I
Right.
approach this?
Yeah.
And then, so that's the mentality I'm using, nothing else.
Yeah.
So, what are your needs for handicap bathrooms? Do we need one on each floor? There's 2 here, and there's 1 here. Is there you only need one on one floor? Or do
We
you
only need one
I
on one
guess,
floor.
yeah,
So now you can figure out your existing basement plan.
one on each floor or one altogether?
We can get away with just one unisex handicap
Okay.
restroom.
Okay.
If we had on one each floor, that would be great. But
Yeah.
you know, if we're trying to make this as cheap as possible, then we can get away with one, and we wouldn't require variance.
Okay.
According to the Massachusetts Office on Disability, there may be like plumbing code bylaws or something.
Well, it's going to go on occupancy as to how many toilets you need,
And how do
both
you,
for men's and women.
and how does that get determined? Because that changes.
Square footage.
Oh, square footage. Okay.
Square footage, you're only allowed so many people per square foot.
Okay.
So your occupancy, the
So
square
I-
footage is going to determine the occupancy, and then that would determine what you need for bathrooms.
Okay.
So I also recall there being a code compliance review when Charlie was doing this, and I'm not sure what the thresholds are, but I know when you approach a certain dollar amount or percentage of building
Yeah.
renovation, you trigger a code compliance review, and then you have to bring up other things into compliance.
Right. Yeah, because if it's, you could trigger the sprinkler rule for over 100 people. There's a lot of things that you could trigger on this thing. So before you got distracted with that, from an identification purpose, I would, if you think that it's one bathroom that you need handicap, where would you want to put it? Because you have one, here's our existing floor, so you have 2 in the basement here, and you have 1 taking out of this room. I would think logic would be you don't want to take space
Space,
out of, of where those rooms are, but, and that's why I keep using this, going back to this plan. This area is storage right now, and that's where you have marked 2 bathrooms. So it's not going to disturb the general layout of your building now. I'm just trying to help you identify what your needs and your wants are
Yeah.
at the same
The
time.
big question that we had about the bathroom location was, could it be where the boiler room is? Could we have a more, use less space for that boiler room and use that more for bathroom? So that would be on the basement level.
The boiler room in the front. So
I know that's where a number of trustees would like it to
I
be.
would think that it would be pretty close to fitting in there. If I'm looking at this
Okay.
space, it's got 2 of these plus this extra slop, this is a slop sink for the janitor's room, fits into this, so it's pretty close. You might take some of that one out. So, can you put it there? Possibly. Yep.
Okay.
So, that's what I would do, is identify what your needs are for the building, accessibility, obviously, your bathrooms, where you may want to put them, because you're gonna, at some point, you're gonna get in with an architect, or designer of some sort. So you should be able to guide them into where you want to go more so than just sitting back and saying, all right, what can I do? Because they're gonna come up with a big elaborate plan that doesn't necessarily meet. The first thing I see on this one is, why do we need to excavate that whole parking lot, put up retaining walls and all this other stuff to go in the building? Why can't we go in, get on an elevator that goes down a half a floor and goes up a half a floor? So, that would be my first thought process on that.
Okay.
I think that's been the big sort of sticking point with these plans is, even inside the building, they just do a lot. The entire switchback stairs, system is replaced with a big hallway on the second floor with glass windows leading into the offices.
Well, this is what I'm saying, so that's a good example, and it's like I had said at one of our meetings, is you have intimate knowledge of the working of the library now. Now you're in there every day, so you know how the flow works. Do you need to have, just what you said, a big hallway with glass walls and all this other stuff? If you don't need that, then you try to rework this a little bit so it works. It's a good plan, but do you need all that? I think that the flow may work a little better for you if this was shifted down. Like, obviously, there was some input into this. Whoever drew this didn't just come up with this idea. You had to give them some guidance. So now how do you make it work? So coming in, excavating this whole area, putting up retaining walls and all this driveway and stuff, cost you a lot of money to come in to get on the elevator when you could have just came in and went a half a floor and up, half a floor down.
So I guess there's like 2 questions. It's too bad the old architect isn't available because, everything's, I'm sure, electronic. They don't want printed plans. So how do we take what's there and reuse it, if, where we can, and alter it? What was my other?
Well, you're not reusing his plans because these are his plans. So if you're changing them, he doesn't own the concept of how to get into the building. He doesn't own the concept
What the
of
BFCC asks is, can we utilize some of this? So some of it's,
Well, you're gonna utilize it in the sense that you're gonna get ideas out of it. Just like this is, you're going through and say, all right, so we don't want to rip out the staircase and everything. We don't want this in the center. We want it off to the side. All right, so you move it off to the side. It comes over in this area. All right, so now we're assuming we need 1 handicap bathroom. Where do we put it? Well,
So no one moves,
we
then
don't
we
want
can
to
use
take
that
away
space.
from the first floor plan and take it out of that room. Why don't we just keep them in the basement? Whether they're here, over here, wherever they are.
Yeah.
The existing floor plan, this is storage and this is a boiler room. So you're not taking any space out of the children's area
Yeah.
or any of this
Other
other
usable
stuff.
space.
It makes more sense. The less you're gonna disturb, the less you have to fix.
right,
So that's gonna reduce your cost.
right.
I think my gut feeling is if you go with a wood structure, you're gonna create maintenance that's gonna keep coming up, and it's just gonna be a sore issue. Sometimes it's better to spend a couple extra dollars on the front side and eliminate problems down the road.
So as far as applying for the grant, is there a certain amount we have to stay under, or would we just apply for
The max they ever
grant?
give out is 250,000.
And then could we supplement,
Well,
ask the
we
town
would
for the
have to.
rest, or?
Well, the problem with this plan here is this has never been presented, and they spent a lot of money on it. And that's what the sticking point is with this. So
Yeah, I can understand.
I would think if you're serious about this, you just dig your feet into it and come up with your idea and it needs to get presented. And if you can get a grant from the town as well, I mean, from the state, that's gonna go a long way with trying to present it.
We won't get any grants from the state. We
Why is
won't get
that?
any grants from
Well,
the state.
from whoever
for-
you get it.
For the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners does all the library construction.
Yep.
So, I mean, unless we can get a grant from the Massachusetts Office on Disabilities, like the main cash faucet for us is not available, because if they were to get their hands on this, they would not fund this. They would not provide any matching funds for this because they considered it woefully inadequate for our town and our population. By the time we meet all of their requirements, we would have a $14 million project.
Well, I want to make it clear, this project was an accessibility project. That's all. It wasn't
And they
a
don't fund
library
those.
project. No, I understand, that's the point.
Right,
Well, I know, but my point is that I'm really trying to fight them on that.
right.
Because they're not doing us any favors.
So what would you?
So to say it's inadequate, I think the purpose of what this was, it served the purpose, which was accessibility.
Right.
No, I'm not saying these are inadequate. I'm saying the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners has a highly inflated idea of what a public library needs to be, and
Right, so you.
My recollection is it was triple the size when Ann Carlson got the grant, you know,
it took up the
20
whole
years
lot.
ago.
Yeah.
It had no parking because it took up the whole lot.
Right, right.
So what are you applying for?
Massachusetts Office on Disabilities does a grant round every fall.
Right.
And they'll award up to $250,000. Usually they'll fund one project, one big project, and then a whole bunch of small ones,
Yeah.
like, installing stair rails here, things, that, and the other. And in the beginning, we had a good shot at it because it was brand new, but it's become highly competitive in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So, I'll keep putting in applications, but, we can't count on that
Yeah.
for funding at this point.
So they're not usually giving out 250,000, they're giving out 150 and the rest to the other
They're
one.
usually giving out 4,000, 6,000. I can send you the spreadsheet that has what they awarded this
Yeah.
past year. And the infuriating thing is it's all going to, Metro West Boston towns, who,
Yeah.
again, by the time you put the people who can afford to put together really, really, really good grant applications are the people who get the grants.
Yeah.
So how much would they normally give for their big project?
One
100,000
project
or
a year
something.
gets about 250,000.
Oh, so
Oh.
that's the, oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
I
But
thought you
it'd
meant
be-
they were all adding up to that. which-
Yeah, that's what I
The
thought.
other thing is they won't partially fund anything. They will either fund you at your ask or nothing at all. So there's no, let's try to apply for what we need. And then if, they partially fund us, then we can make up the delta. They don't play that game either.
I can't remember what the name of the board is, but there was one that you were going to that was the town one that funds the larger projects.
Capital
Okay.
Committee?
Capital Committee?
So is that they do 50/50? Is that like a 50/50 thing? Like if this,
Well, the Capital Committee does what,
They don't fund
Capital
projects, they
Committee
make
does.
recommendations to town meeting.
Okay.
and then town meeting votes to,
Right.
provide you funds through debt exclusion. or what have
Okay,
you.
so then we're kind of stuck, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because the Mass Office on Disabilities will only do all of it. We can't say that we've talked to the town and, they could make up the difference. That's not going to happen.
Oh, well, they could fund, they don't have to fund the entirety of the project, but they will only fund the entirety of your ask. So
Okay. If
you
you-
have
if you
to
went-
kind of play that game of chicken where you're asking for a low enough amount that you think that they'll accept, because they won't come down from that. But you could still supplement with other things. But what you ask them for in your grant application is what you're going to get
Yeah,
or not.
they don't
There's
change the
no,
numbers. I have no
wiggle
idea
room
how
there.
to estimate these sorts of things,
and that's, I guess, my big question right now
Yeah.
is procedural. How do we get
Right.
from, that idea that we want, this on one side of the library, we want, minimal amount of paving possible, and we want the accessible restroom in the boiler room, to
Like real
making it
numbers
happen.
and-
In 3 easy steps.
I got a quick question. What's your long-term goal for the building?
I think this is the long-term.
I think this is the long-term
No,
goal,
but this is it. This is all you want to do.
pretty much.
Okay.
I mean,
Because that's going to make a difference. Bill's talked about it before, that you can't do
Bid split.
repetitive.
Bid split.
Right.
So the concept of bid splitting is when you intentionally, break projects into smaller, more manageable sizes with a larger project in mind, simply to avoid procurement
rejected.
requirements
Right.
and, so for example, state law says that if the estimated design fee is less than 30,000 or estimated construction cost is less than 300,000, then you don't have to go out to bid for an architect. If it's over those numbers, you have to solicit bids or proposals from architects and then go through a designer selection process.
So how do you know if it's,
Yeah.
how
would
much
they
it's
get a
gonna cost?
guesstimate as?
It's a
Without going
question.
to an
Well,
architect.
no,
Completely.
you have some, first you gotta have an idea of what project you want. So let's assume it's this kind of thing, just this.
Yeah.
Okay, not talking bathroom reno or anything. You got square footage costs, it's on levels. You can take those numbers and, it's a simple, you could talk to some people in the industry, what's a good price per foot to carry? I could help you estimate the outside work, the driveway cost, if we need stormwater system. Once we know that, I could help you with that. And then come up with an estimate. And I would tack on some conservative inflation for the purpose of your estimate, maybe 20% or something like that, just to make sure that, that's manageable. Then, once you have that number, then you'll know if you trigger these requirements,
Right.
and then you have to.
They would have to include the bathroom into that, though.
If they include the bathroom, then
No,
it'll be
because
a square
that's part of
footage
their
reno.
ADA compliance, is they need a bathroom.
So they would add that in, and so.
So we could ask for those estimates without having plans.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you have to start with. You have to try to get some.
But we
Seems
have to
opposite
define
to
the
me, but-
scope of what the minimum project
Right.
is.
Right.
And the driver shouldn't be, hey, we want to stay under this threshold. It should be, what do we want, what do we need?
Right.
I
would
think
even
we
think
sort of
about
have a pretty
numbers.
clear idea,
Yeah.
but I guess we're looking to bounce off you guys. Does that make sense? Are we
From an
thinking too small?
accessibility
Are we thinking
standpoint,
too
to
big?
take-
makes sense. I'm just looking at it from a building standpoint,
Yeah.
and nothing else, so.
If we know we want roughly that, 2 paved spots, restroom in the boiler room, and carpet in the basement.
Right.
Next step would be what would the next step be? If we define that as our scope, and we know that's what we
Well,
want.
Charlie did an estimate a few years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And it was roughly that? Or was it
Oh,
not?
for the last,
Oh, for the grant round? And, of course, that was the one that
Site work,
involved.
concrete walks, drive and retaining walls, 45 to 65,000. Entrance, canopy, vestibule, and storefront, don't know what that means. 25 to 35,000. Accessibility, toilet, room, and fixtures, 35 to 45. GC overhead and profit at 15%. 15,750 to 21,750, meaning the total construction cost he had for those things as 120,750 to 166,750
For the whole project.
for the estimated construction cost.
Okay, so we're within the number.
And I didn't communicate with him on this. I know Justin, you did, right?
Yeah.
So
That was
I
based
don't
off
know.
of what work? Off these plans?
No, that was the plan where we basically cut a hole in a meeting room, put in a Lula lift.
So is this different than what we just talked about?
Yeah. Yeah, he was just saying that was an internal lift.
That is the,
So if we're talking more than that, which it seems.
I don't know how to word this. You go back,
Based
go
on
back.
this number, we're probably gonna trip the over 300.
I would think that you're over the
Yeah.
300 mark just
Yeah.
by what I see going on
Okay.
here, probably.
I like this plan that cost us like, 20 years ago, 29,000. Let me just go back.
Updated.
I don't-
Yeah.
Yeah, these are
we
them.
wanted a
These
copy
are-
of. I don't know if it'd be worth.
This is what that estimate was.
No, I do want a copy of that for my records. But that cost I have no confidence in.
So that was the
Yeah.
two handicap spots and then an internal elevator.
Yep. So that had, instead of tacking anything on the outside, it just had the 2 spots coming in right there, and then
Yeah.
a lift and a little entryway.
And so that's very limited,
Right.
and that was 167,000.
Yeah.
But the,
And the bathroom's only right. Oh, the bathroom.
going back to that quote estimate, the, or can you get back to where you were?
Maybe.
Cost estimate.
Like the website? That's useful, huh?
It is.
Awesome.
Yep, so
They're
the,
saying we have to like bookmark it so we have it like in
Yeah.
our favorites,
And the town, this is the town
everything
website.
all together.
yeah, I've actually copied all of those documents down, put them in a zip file, then I uploaded them to the library website, and I have hyperlinks to all of them. So the estimated construction costs, the site work, the entrance, which I don't understand how a door and a little canopy costs $35,000, but whatever. Accessible toilet room and fixtures, the estimated construction cost. Then he has the fees. The addendum is the platform list and enclosure. So
And that's
that
not
in and of
included.
itself
Right there, that's 85.
is another 85 grand.
So that's on top of
75,
this?
85
That's on
grand,
top
yeah.
of that. yeah.
Okay, so this is
So
construction.
that's why I was, pricing this out, and
Yeah, so
assuming the
he's at
worst
three-
case
he's at
scenario
over
of
300,000
300
right
something
now.
thousand.
310.
Yeah, but it's construction cost that we're
Right.
looking at, 300, not the engineering. So he's got that second grouping of architectural engineering.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So you got 225 plus 85, right?
No,
Because when I applied for that
67 plus
grant,
85.
I was just applying for
That's the whole project cost.
this part,
So
and
that's
if we got the
250.
grant, I was going to try
That's
to hit up the
250,
town
and
for the
then,
platform lift.
And then
Oh,
this is
okay.
clearly going to be over 300, so.
Like, I have this
think
money,
you need to
give me this
solicit-
money.
Right, and
Or we
that's like a
could do
good way to
this.
break it
Yeah.
down so they know what you're talking about.
So, I mean, based on what I'm seeing for numbers here, I think you're easily going to be over the 300 construction cost. So you need to solicit architects. That's what that means.
Okay.
So we would need to do like a solicitation official bid
RFP.
process.
An
for-
RFP and then a process, interviews, stuff like that.
Does it have to go through building facilities?
That has to go through building facilities, yeah.
Oh, joy.
How does that work? You've probably done this before, Jessica.
Those guys, those building guys.
And
So
how many
just-
do we need? How many bids do we need? Do we know? Or you just put it out and you get as many as you get?
You get as many as you get, but I think typically you want at least 2, obviously.
Okay. We have
for
2
obvious
names.
reasons.
Yeah, we have 2 names at least.
So if, I found $2.5 million tonight, what would be the next step if we wanted to do this?
If you had $2.5 million, you just.
Well, I would say you need an update on the
Yeah.
price estimate because it's been a few years. And then you'd probably have to have somebody step into the role of architect because,
Yeah.
Charlie's not doing it anymore. I mean, we have the whole set, we have this, and we have a manual that goes with it too, with all the specs and stuff.
So the question is that what you want, this?
I mean, if I could afford it, that would be great, but, no. I want what we can actually feasibly make happen, because I'm tired of shortchanging our current patrons for, a future which may or may not materialize. And that's one of the reasons I want to focus really hard on 2020, because it marks the 20th
Yeah,
anniversary of this whole project. So kids with disabilities have been born and entered their adult lives without ever being able to enter their library since this started knocking around. So I want progress, and progress seems to be the odds, of making any progress increase exponentially whenever the cost is lower.
Not what
Yeah.
you can get, is what you gotta decide what you need and want.
I think we.
If you take
we're
what
pretty
just
clear
what you
on
can
what we
get,
want.
then you may
Yeah.
not be ultimately happy with it, and then you're back trying to do something else later on.
I think our expectations are
Yeah.
just to get something that works and that people can use would be
Right.
amazing.
I know. I have one question on the materials for that exterior. So we're talking brick, because brick is what's there now, but it's hard to match what's old. Is there, sometimes it looks good if there's like a complementary material that's there. Is there
Yeah.
something else that we want to consider that's not as, as expensive, or is
And
brick
that's
our best
something
bet?
that a architect / designer would come up with and give you different options for it. Is, for this building, argument's sake, when we did the windows, the architect gave us different variations as to what's gonna go on top of the windows, whether we have a full view window like that, or if we have the panels like they were on the front, and showing us different things that we could make that decision. And that's what an architect would do for you. And if ultimately you ended up with a clapboard sided building, you could still do it with something that was longer lasting. Instead of
Vinyl.
one
Yeah,
side, you
like the
cement board
composites or
siding or something like that. I'm not saying that's the direction you should go,
Yeah,
but
but there's
that's what they're gonna bring to the table. They're gonna give you different options, and maybe they can mix different textures and materials with it and make it attractive. And they do that all the time on buildings, whether it's, I've seen a house that had the galvanized metal that was on it, and it was like,
Yeah.
first look at it's like,
Yeah,
wow,
and
pretty
not
cool,
sure
but
some that
you
looked
wouldn't think of using it. So that's what they're gonna bring to the table for you.
Right.
You also want ease of maintenance, because you don't
Yeah.
want something, you hit said metal panel and
Right.
just
Yeah.
these things
Yeah, no, I
get
did.
scratched, and then
Right.
it's just a maintenance and cost nightmare. So you want something that's gonna be durable, usable, and easily maintainable.
Yeah. If you have a practical approach and it's gonna meet your needs, and you have something that's not gonna be a money pit from a maintenance standpoint, it's a lot easier to sell.
Yeah. So I'm not all that familiar with reading these plans, but when I'm looking at this, it's like twice as wide as it looks like it might need to be.
What's that, the addition?
Yeah, so we'd move it over, but it would probably be smaller. Smaller isn't necessarily cheaper, but I'm not sure why it needs
Yeah,
to be
well,
quite that large.
what's gonna happen is,
How much cheaper?
this is probably, the width of these
page
stairs, this space here is about 1.5 times the width of that when you come up the stairs here. So there's a certain amount of space that you're gonna want out there. Whether somebody's out there with a wheelchair, as you're walking at the same time, there's different requirements for that.
Right, right.
So, so now, that's this one here with the retaining wall. So now,
Right.
you incorporate this idea with that. Now you don't need as big a staircase. You have a half a flight going up, and you have a half a flight going down.
Okay.
And you have this elevator that's in there. So that's gonna change that a little bit.
Yeah. And then we're moving that to the left,
Right.
relocating the bathroom. Okay. I don't know how to do that RFP process. I don't know.
Oh, no, I'll
Justin,
help you
you're
with that.
familiar
I just need to know what the scope is.
Yeah.
So what do we need to prepare for you to help us with the RFP?
Well, I think you
Just,
identify what it is that you wanna do.
But is it just
Few
like a
ideas
bathroom, an
going back
accessible
and
bathroom,
forth.
or is it more like a bathroom located, X size, or, what is it that
How
we're?
specific do we
well,
need to be, I
right.
guess?
Well, what I'd like to probably talk about at this point is schedule, okay? So we would probably want to know what the target date is and then back into it. What's the end goal? Is it to get a grant application, or is it bid documents? What's the funding source? So these things need to be kind of set before we proceed. If you have funds to hire an architect, that takes some of the worry out, but what's the plan for getting the construction funding and that kind of thing? So schedule-wise, what are we looking at? When is the accessibility
I know we said
grants?
fall, but I
Next
don't know
fall.
what's- Like, is it September, or is it December?
That's September, October.
Okay.
It varies.
2020,
Which isn't a lot of time.
No.
right.
Right, I mean, a lot of time gets eaten up just
Mm-hmm.
putting these things out to bid, interviewing people, and then making a selection.
Well, a group like this, if they meet once a month.
Right,
you
right,
only
that's
get
what I'm
12 you
laughing
only get
about.
12 meetings, so the time goes very quickly.
Yes.
That's why I'm really going to try to push fundraising tonight to the trustees.
Yeah, that's our meeting.
No, that's good.
I want
but
newspaper
would-
ads. I want
you know,
GoFundMe's.
focus
I
on
want everything
what
out there.
What your desire is for the need for this thing. And then that's gonna help you a lot. So then you can,
Yeah. So Justin, I don't know if you can answer those questions now, or maybe we send an email after we have.
Well, I think that's like the 4 points, you know, we want the driveway, the entrance,
Yeah. But
access to both floors and restroom.
But what I mean is the funding sources. I'm not sure offhand what we have, if it's even feasible for the library to pay for the plans or not. And do we have another
You have
possibility than
however
that
much
Matt
Ellie and
Thompson?
Betty will let you part with.
So-
I mean,
Okay,
to be
fine.
honest.
There is money.
Because I don't think they understand that process. Let's assume that it costs $500,000. What would the designer fee be for that?
Generally, rule of thumb, 10%.
So you're
Okay.
talking $50,000 for your drawings.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to help you put your head around it, because
Yeah.
at some point, somebody said $9,000 for plans.
Because these were like 60,000, I think,
No,
weren't they?
90.
90?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I don't want to touch
you
them.
That's a long
and-
memory.
And that's the whole thing, and that's
Yeah.
why it's such a touchy subject,
Right.
because $90,000 gets spent and it never went anywhere. So,
Yeah.
this is what you wanna do, that's why I said, dig your feet in, and you gotta move forward with it.
Yeah.
And you can marry these two different ideas together, and I think we pretty much identified that part of it. So now you put that together and then talk to the trustees if this is what they want to do. You need to start moving, because you don't have a lot of time to do it.
Right.
So schedule, funding, and scope. So I would put it to the three of you, that's what you need to think about, and then I can facilitate the RFP process, and that's easy. I've done a bunch of them,
That's good. Thank you.
I can handle that. But
It's hard because those three things are so interdependent on
Right,
each
it's
other.
like, if it
So
costs
now-
this, then it's,
Another thing,
the
because I
funding
don't
source is
understand,
this.
so maybe it'll help other people understand as well. The grant process is for next September. We'll just use that for a date. Do they bring this to town meeting prior to that?
Well, it depends, and again, I'm not sure what level of detail you need to accompany a grant application, okay? Is it a full set of construction-ready documents, or is it a concept?
Full set of construction-ready documents is what they would prefer.
Okay.
that would make us much more competitive.
But then if we don't end up the grant and we can't fund it, we end up with another one of these.
Right.
No, absolutely. So, so they apply for the grant and they get the grant, for argument's sake. Is there a time period to use that?
Next fiscal year.
All right. So then you have to be ready for the spring meeting to present it to the town to get your matching funds, whatever they are, whether it's 50,
That's right, from a
50.
timing perspective,
Yeah.
you can't ignore, you can't operate in a vacuum, you gotta target those town meeting dates to
Right.
get funding.
Right.
Okay.
And you don't wanna.
Unless we can
you don't
fundraise
wanna
enough
ask
that
for a
we don't
special
need town
meeting just for this.
Exactly.
Which is
And
my goal.
I know for the May town meeting, you gotta have the warrant articles in March.
Okay.
Okay,
That's good to
so-
know.
So,
What about this,
Time
like the
is very
special one
short.
that they just had? Is that, can something like that happen in that?
Well, that's a
timeframe?
fall town meeting, that's just to clean up the books from bills left over.
So there's really,
but it can,
It
it can.
could,
There
yeah.
there are capital projects that get submitted on the
Yeah.
fall, and it can
Yeah.
happen.
yeah, but we want to avoid that if we.
I think politically it'd be prudent to target it and annually.
Yeah.
And you can't. A
But
capital
now,
project
do
for
you
the fall
have-
that comes out of free cash is actually, I think, a good strategy, because then you don't have nearly as much interest. Spring, you have a lot of interest, and I think my goal
You may have more now.
would always try to be. A lot is fine. I mean, my pie in the sky goal is to not have to take this to town meeting, because I want to get funds privately.
You'd be a hero.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good point too, that we're saying,
And I
like
think
having
taking our
plans, people are
scope
more
from
inclined to
2.5
donate.
million to you know, maybe 400,000 would go a long way in making that a possibility.
I would tend to, you're gonna be minimum of
keep
5,
going
but
up.
that's okay.
Minimum of 5?
Well, you're already at, over 200,000, you're at 250,000, you don't even have a building. You don't have a set
I'm
of
not,
stairs.
I'm
You
not
just
sure on
have
numbers.
A parking lot and a canopy and a door and a little
Lift.
thing to shoot you up to the next level. So, so if you get the grant in September, you have a year to use that money?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
When do they award the grants?
They award them, I honestly don't know, because I've never made it that far.
so you have a year to use the money, and do they have, the project have to be completed before they give you the money?
I don't think so. I think that they give you the funding to complete the project.
Okay, because just timing wise, if you go to, you have in September, and then you're gonna hit, well, if you're ready, I guess you can go to the November meeting, the fall meeting, and try to present it then, so if it works. But then you have 10 months to get this job, and you haven't got the bidding process, you gotta go through all that, that takes what, 3 months? Probably?
Well,
3 months?
it depends if they trigger filed sub bids. I'd have to,
Right.
you know.
But it
depends.
just takes time, and then they're gonna start, they gotta schedule in, and something like this, they probably wouldn't even break ground until late summer. If
Oh,
you
to worry
started the
about the
process. Well, because there's not like a house that, yeah, all right, I'll be there Monday morning. It doesn't work that way. Just watch the window projects when they do them around here. It's a process. You have all these stupid requirements, and then their scheduling and everything else. And with that, prevailing wage means slower pace. Well, it's just how it works. So, and I'm only asking these questions again, from a building standpoint. And I'm not building it, but I'm assuming that I'm in that role, so
Yeah.
how do I get paid? If Bill's giving me the money, and I have a certain period to use that, what's the restriction? Do I have to be 100% done for him to give me the money, or can I
Yeah.
just start it?
Right.
So you need to know all these things before you spend any money
Yeah.
and dive into it. If you're doing it from a grant standpoint, if you get somebody that's gonna give you a ton of money, then I guess that part of it, the timing wouldn't matter as much.
Schedule, scope. What was the other one of your holy trinity?
Schedule, scope, and
Funding, schedule, scope.
funding.
Yeah. And it's like Bill was saying, that you take the money and he works backwards. I do the same thing, is if you tell me that I have $100,000 to do a project, I do the same thing. I work back until I get to zero. It's like, okay, so what do we do with the rest of the stuff on the list?
Yeah, yeah.
The number doesn't matter if it doesn't cover everything.
Okay.
And you can't think of it in dollars and cents. You can't, it doesn't relate to how your household money. It's a number.
No,
So
yeah, yeah.
you gotta identify what your needs are and just go with it. And it is what it is. If it's $100 or $1 million, it is what it is. If you believe in it and it works and it makes sense,
And if it's
then
what
other
you
people will
need,
support
which
as
clearly
well.
you need it, you know, that's never been
Right.
the question.
Right. It's the approach to it. Spending money and then not wholeheartedly getting to the finish line. I think that's what needs to be done.
Well, let's go raise some money, folks.
No, but I think it makes sense what you want to do. Is just redefining it a little bit. I think you can accomplish the same thing and kind of simplify it a little bit. It would be nice to have all this, but do you really need it?
Probably if you're gonna spend that kind of money, it'd be
it,
a whole new building, and that becomes,
I'm looking at this, and it's not that much distance to the driveway.
To what's out there now? Well, look what's out, I mean,
Right.
that's the height of the wall that's out there now.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they did it this way,
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the other issue with, these plans is operational cost, because, I mean, if you were to build this library, we would need more staff.
Oh, yeah.
The first floor would need
More
staff,
maintenance.
whereas, the less, the more compact you can make things, the less ongoing
Yeah.
operational costs will be.
All right, so if we
But
get,
it's gotta suit your needs.
At the beginning, at the very onset of this, we went through a schematic design, and we went through I forget what they call it, basically a scoping session, and Charlie spent a lot of time with Ann Carlson, the library director, and went through the wants and needs, and that's how we got to this point. And there were a number of iterations that we went through. This is just the final product. It was a very long process. And the trustees participated throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I think funding being what it is, though, we should just kind of like axe off the wants and go with the needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to make sure that it's gonna satisfy your somewhat long-term needs. For it. So you have to be cautious as to, you can't make an economical choice, you have to make a sensible choice.
That's right. I don't necessarily know that you just want to pave 2 parking spaces, for example.
Right. It's gonna be problematic. When
It
you
will
plow in the wintertime, you're gonna
Get
rip up the edge
gravel
of
on
it.
the asphalt, that's
Yeah.
right.
Or catch the edge of the asphalt and
Yep.
peel it back.
Yep, yep.
You're in the springtime or the fall before the ground's frozen or thawed out, you're gonna be ripping all that dirt up, you're gonna be ripping off the asphalt. There's a lot of problems gonna come with it.
So, to that point, I think you do need to think about what you need.
Right.
And just trying to minimize it strictly for that dollar amount, I don't know that that's the wise thing to do.
On the onset, you gotta, don't even think about the dollar amount. Identify what your needs are and what you wanna do. And to Bill's point, even though because you make an economical decision by saying, I want 2 spots. We'll use that for an example, because it's a very good example. But it's not a practical choice. It's an economical choice. So you have to figure out which one makes more logical sense. It doesn't make logical sense to only pave 2 spots because you're gonna rip it out. So we saved the infiltrator, whatever you call that foolish thing.
Stormwater thing.
But in the long term, it's gonna become a maintenance nightmare, and you could have probably bought a bunch of those things when you're all done, so.
So I guess in the grand scope of things, I guess I just find myself wondering how much money is there to be saved?
Right.
Because the
Well,
savings
I can tell you right off the top of my head that you're gonna save a lot of money, because you already identified the fact that, and if you're correct, that you only need 1 handicap bathroom, not 3. You're not taking down walls, and once you cut a spot into this, well, I need to finish this wall on the inside and the outside and whatever else I disturbed. Well, that's money. You're taking out a set of staircases, which means you gotta build in a floor system, which means you gotta marry in all the floor coverings, which means you're gonna put up these glass walls in so you can overlook whatever you're overlooking.
will that savings be made up for? I guess my question is how am I
These
phrasing this?
cosmetic finishes are gonna be very expensive, and then you have all the other related costs that come into that.
They're going back to square one with the design process also sounds like it's going to be really expensive.
This design doesn't do you any good anymore, because the person that did this isn't here. So you need somebody that's gonna take over this.
So all the measurements, all the legwork
Yeah.
are gonna have to go back and field verify, and,
Right.
no architect's just gonna work off of that set of plans.
So we can
It's a
throw
bummer.
these in the fire now? Is
I
that?
guess so.
No, I
I
wouldn't
would not allow that.
No,
So
but
if we're looking at 500,000 for,
that's just a
I know.
fictitious number.
Yeah,
That- you're gonna
don't
fi-
hold them to that.
but then like how
yeah, but
much?
The whole point was you're
but
not
what
supposed
you-
to start with a
yeah, but
number.
what you-
Right.
Yeah, but what you gotta do is just
I guess
stop about the
my,
numbers and identify what you need, and then the numbers will come as
but
a
if we can
secondary.
never get it funded, then we'll be back here
An
again.
exercise in futility.
Yeah.
So we
We'll be at
need to
20 years
balance
older.
being able to get it funded through the town if
That's been the
necessary.
struggle since
Yes.
day one. That's why
Yes.
we're
But you
still here.
cannot
Yes.
design around cost.
So what do we do then?
You identify what
either have the need or you
and
don't.
I'm not trying to be difficult, but you
No.
gotta identify what your needs are. And
So how
then
do
you
we, how do
can
we
put a
end up
cost to
not
it.
being here again?
If you told me I wanna build a house, but I don't wanna spend
I
more than
get that.
$500,000.
I totally get
okay,
that, but I
so
guess where
what do
we
you
are
want?
is like, is it worth doing this? Or are we just gonna end up with another one of these? Maybe not 2.5
can't
million,
answer
but
that.
would it be a million?
You know, you have to put the proposal before the people to vote on.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
But
so-
again, we have to spend a lot of money to get to that
So,
point.
yeah, but what you gotta do is, who's driving this project?
I would hope the library trustee.
No, but are you people behind it, and then.
I think we're on the
to-
same page.
To Shirley's points that she made at our meeting, that you have to make sure they're 100% on board. And what she means by that is if you, in your heart, you feel strong about this, you just carry it right through to the finish line. And if at the end of the day, you ended up with another one of these, you didn't waste your time because you tried to make it right. What happened with this is we got halfway through the room and said, you know what, I don't want to go across the rest of the room.
So you
That's the
think there
wrong
was
approach.
a chance
So
that the
you-
town would have funded it?
I have no idea what they would have done, but if you feel strong about something, you bring it forward and you continue through the whole thing. You can't go get all excited and, I'm not gonna do it, you do it. I'm not gonna do it, you do it. You just have to, I think if you redefine this project as to what actually you need for that, that's what I would do.
We need a unified board who is enthusiastic.
Well,
about
you
the
have to,
project.
if you come up, and I don't know who's on your trustee board, and it really doesn't matter to me who's on your trustee board. If you come up with a logical approach as to what you want and what you need, that makes sense, you present it to them, and if they support you, you go for it.
I guess the hard part is, because some don't really want to give money away, like to tell them we need 18,000 or 58,000, or like how much do we need? If we were to fund, the library friend or the trustees were to fund the drawings, we don't really know the number, and that's the hard part. I'm sure gonna be for everybody.
Right.
I would imagine you're gonna spend at least $50,000. That's my gut
I don't
feeling
know.
right off the
I
top
don't
of
know
my
if
head.
that's gonna be
No, but
something
you,
everyone
you,
can bite off.
again, don't even think of that. You're trying to spend his money like it's yours, and you can't do that. So, and I'm not saying it's Bill's.
you can.
No, but you can't do it that way. You have to identify what the project is, come up with some reasonable guesses as to what it would cost, okay? No, but we'll get to that point.
we'll get there.
We'll get to that point, but this is a starting point. Identify what it is that you want, then we come up with some numbers, and you can't think of that number like it's your money, because it's not the
Right.
same thing.
Right.
The project is a standalone project. So the number is the number. It's only a math problem. So
Yeah.
you get that point and you present it to your trustees, and if they want to move forward with it, then that's, you keep going on the next step. But this is going to be an aggressive approach because your time is ticking very quickly.
Yeah. So let's kind
It
of,
took us 2 months to get here,
right.
okay? So that's,
Yeah, so I guess like what I would like to do to not waste any more time is like lay out the steps exactly. I know, Bill, that you need the scope from us to do the RFP, but
Yes.
is that the first step or is that a second step?
I need the scope and the schedule,
Okay,
both of those.
okay. Which we
And
can
I
do.
don't think we're ready to provide a schedule yet.
so
Not yet, but we could do that
schedule
within a few
for
weeks.
the
I need the
grant
schedule
application.
to include in the RFP. You typically would provide the scope of what you're asking them to do along with the schedule you're asking them to do it in.
Yeah.
So that, I can wordsmith it and put it out so they have some idea of what kind of level of effort it requires. If it's one guy over a year or 6 guys
Okay.
over 2 months.
All
you know?
right, so,
Right.
And that gets posted publicly or whatever, shared publicly?
Yes.
right, so,
Okay.
so with that, the schedule would be, he wants to submit in September, so you would want your, I'm just using hypothetical nonsense.
Yeah.
that you would want your drawings completed by July. But you need, back up from that, you want to have them to be reviewed at a certain point, so you'd have your Gantt chart, correct? A flow chart to just show,
Yeah, I would leave the schedule up to them. I need to know when we need
what's the
Final
deadline for
product.
submittal?
What product when,
Okay.
okay? And so when I say schedule, it's not you trying to orchestrate when they
Right.
have to provide A, B, and C.
Okay.
It's you saying when you need a deliverable, whether it's, you know, an accompanying document with cost estimates to submit to accompany your grant application. Or if it's, you know, consider town meeting dates when you're doing that, if you need something
Right.
for town meeting date. Those are the things you need to focus on for schedule, so that deliverables need to be articulated in the RFP that I'm gonna prepare.
Okay, so do we need to do anything else before that, or would, you know, do we want to have another
I
conversation?
mean, we really can't, you need the funding for the architect too, obviously.
Okay.
We can't put it out to bid
Yeah.
unless we know you have the money to pay for it,
Right.
obviously.
And that could be
So-
up to 50,000.
Well, you say up to, we don't know,
Yeah.
okay?
I have no idea.
It's gonna be based on the scope, and after we get your scope, we'll look at square footages, try to come up with some costs, so we have you
A
know,
guesstimate.
Okay, so we can
a
take
good estimate.
our ideas and come up with an estimate from
Yeah.
that.
So,
Okay.
thinking through what you were just saying, is a strong possibility that they may have to go to the spring meeting to get money appropriated.
Possibly, I don't know what kind of
for-
funds you have
For your
access to.
funding, if
Yeah.
you don't have the funds internally, your only other option would be to go to town meeting and get the town to appropriate money.
Correct.
For, just for the drawings?
That's gonna be a challenge.
That is gonna be a
I'm just
challenge.
telling you, just putting it out there, that's
Yes.
gonna be a challenge. You're
Okay,
gonna-
that's what I was thinking, that's what I was worried about.
But, to Bill's point, you can't advertise something you can't pay for. So,
And Justin is putting some efforts about,
right,
that might be separate.
yep.
Fundraise, guys.
If you
Fundraise.
Yeah. So it's really the funding, figure out if we have the funding first, and then we put
Right.
out the RFP.
Yeah,
But not the number, just the funding.
Right.
That's the funding for the, just for the
plans,
design. Okay, you're not even up to the project yet.
yes.
And that's typically a 10%, right? So.
That's a good budget.
A very conservative number for this project would be a minimum of $500,000, I would think.
Okay.
So I would say that you're gonna need $50,000 to $75,000 to make drawings again. Well,
Sounds like the drawings were cheap then.
And it's not just drawings, it's,
there's a lot to it.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
a
oh,
lot
yeah,
to
it. Yeah.
obviously.
Because these weren't even like final.
Well, there's code reviews and everything.
Yeah.
those
else.
are design development, they're good to bid. The next step in the process would have been going out to bid with these documents.
All right. that's
But we needed the
interesting to
funding, so these were
Yeah.
sufficient to go to funding.
But we can't go out to bid with these anymore since our architect is gone, right?
Yeah, and it would need to be
We
updated.
would need an architect to take over the
Yeah,
project. And,
cost updated.
and then costs, again, you know, it's been, this is what,
And-
2012, you know,
And the building code's changed,
and the building codes changed, right?
and it's gonna be changing again.
I have a silly question. That whole building committee, when they did the schools and they got all that funding from the state, is that not something that the library could go for? I forget what it was all called.
It would be through the
That would have to be
MBLC for
through-
us.
Yeah,
It's
that's
only for the
MSBA,
library.
Mass School Building Authority. They provide funding for schools after a demonstrated need.
Only
Um,
schools.
And that's the grant that Ann Carlson got way back in 2000 or thereabouts. But the issue was it tripled the size of the building. They did go to town meeting. Didn't they go to town meeting?
I'm not sure.
They never went to town meeting.
think
There
they
was
did.
draft.
No, it went to town.
Did it go to
so?
town meeting?
And it failed.
Yeah, it failed at town meeting.
It failed
I
at
thought.
town meeting. I think because the building was too large, and that was the issue.
Yeah.
And that's what the MBLC does. They say you need so many square feet per capita based on their projection of your population in 30 years. You need so many miles of shelf space. You need meeting rooms which can accommodate a certain percentage, which are separatable from your main facilities, and like all these things, which some libraries, some communities need, and ours doesn't. We don't need an amphitheater.
For your
Ukuleles,
Eight.
your ukuleles.
We have ukuleles,
hanging on.
but we don't need an amphitheater for them. They were
They
pretty
can use
cheap
the
in the
lawn.
grand scheme of things. So,
All right.
and Douglas already has lots of other meeting spaces available to them. So, I mean, we don't need a room that can sit 100 people.
Yeah, so it could be worse.
Hard to get 100 people to show up. To
But it's gonna be easier for everybody to focus on if you can just get out of the price point and try to identify.
It's hard to
The
do
project.
that, though.
It is
It's
hard
gonna
to
be
do that.
hard
I'm
to
like
get
trying to figure out how we're
anyone.
gonna propose
but
that.
It's gonna be
in the
hard
next
to
meeting.
get any,
Well,
even like full
that's
support
there was
of
a
the
guy in
board.
Gulliver's Travels that was like that. It's never gonna work. I just know it. So we gotta forget him and just go with
well, there is a long history that we're taking into account.
but
Right.
yeah, but you just
Wait for change over the whole board. Start again.
Well, I mean, if the question is, can we fund it? And, like the political climate in Douglas, the way voters have typically gone, I mean, I don't think that we can say we can fund it unless we can fund it.
I have a question that, sorry, I don't know if anyone could answer. What if the Friends of the Library combination had enough to put in 50 or 60,000, but they weren't really comfortable with it? They would like to get some of it back once the building was, once some of the bids had come out and we'd got some of the funding. They would, appreciate $20,000 back into their coffers. That kind of
I
a
don't
thing?
think MGLs allow
not,
you
I
to
think.
use municipal funds
What
that
if it's
way.
from someone like, Staples or,
Mr. Rich.
someone who's just putting money in with no stipulations attached to it?
Could
I
we
don't
get
have an
money
answer for
back?
that.
Yeah.
Just get them to give you the money up front.
Who? The person
rich
who would be?
person.
Yeah, the rich
This
person.
fictitious person.
oh, if they had
Funding
no
person.
stipulations.
They're not
they'd be
fictitious,
doing
they're
it to the
out there.
library.
I know, but,
So then it wouldn't be. I don't think you could commingle the funds like that.
yeah.
I think
Okay.
if you got a benefactor that wanted to donate
Then they would
donate back to the library.
donate back
give
to
you
the Friends of the Library or
$20,000,
something.
And then that would be clean and free unless
Yeah,
they
that's probably less
stipulated this is going
complicated.
towards one of his ukuleles or something.
Well, that's why we have carefully demarcated
Right.
municipal, donation accounts. And, right now, any solicitation I do, I'm trying to get them to put it in the library interest-bearing building account, so that,
Right.
the interest on our donations aren't going to the general fund, they're going to actually endow the possibility of a library building project. And,
Okay.
but, with I really want the board, like in this committee, you two, to focus on fundraising this upcoming year.
Okay.
Because
Get
the-
baking.
As much as you're saying, work from your needs to the number, if we have at least, a good amount squirreled away to guarantee, to offer a guarantee of success
Right.
for our efforts, then we'll be able to get a lot more buy-in, both from the board and from library supporters and, from the community at large too. Because, 14 votes was the difference between having a library and, the town going into inevitable receivership this past year, so.
Yeah, that was scary.
This is the town that voted down a fire rescue pumper truck first go around. I think that we have to inspire passion, but we have to get it, from individuals donating to the library, not through a tax levy.
Okay.
And then we have
Well,
funding. Then we
because
can
of
make
the-
a schedule based on that funding, and then we can, we know our scope.
Forward.
Because of the history of the plans and everything else that's before today, I think, my own personal feeling, if you were able to raise the funds to get the plans done, and you actually brought it all the way to a presentation, that would hold a lot more than trying to ask for $50,000 to draw up more plans, because
It'd be a whole different thing, right?
anybody
Like
that,
they're
anybody that
committed.
remembers it is gonna be up in arms about it.
Right, I think that's a
But
good point.
if you could get it self-funded,
Mm-hmm.
to at least get the drawings done,
So it's gonna-
it shows that
It's a
you're
catch-22.
serious about it and more
Right.
passionate about it, just to get the thing done, and there is a need for it, nobody's ever denied that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it never got pushed
Right,
to bring it up.
right.
If it's gonna fail, it's gonna fail. If it's gonna go, it's gonna go. You can't think about that, just like the numbers, you can't think about it. It's just a job. Just identify it, bring it. If it works, it works.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, then you go back to the drawing board and try to come up with another approach once you get feedback from what the opposition is. But it's a pretty simplified process, project that you have. You're gonna have accessibility, and you're gonna put a bathroom in a parking lot. It's
Yeah.
not like,
Yeah, we're not doing something odd. I mean,
yeah, but it's somebody that wouldn't go to the library, and you're saying, I want you to spend money on it, and it's like, and they look at the plans, if they understood them, I didn't look at them, in great detail, but the way Justin described them, well, you're gonna take out the stairway, and you're gonna put in a corridor, and I'm gonna have glass walls that I go, what do you need all that for?
Yeah.
Is the first thing they say.
Right.
But, it's hard to argue, well, we can't get anybody up to the second floor, we can't get them into the basement from the parking lot unless we carry them, and to just.
Which I've done.
Really?
Point.
Yes.
Yeah, but to your point that because this has been going on for so long, and it's only because, I think, because people haven't pushed hard enough from the library side to bring it, to find out if it will pass or not. People have been born and gone into adulthood and never seen accessibility to the building. So that's a good point to use when you're trying to present your project.
Right,
It's something that, when you said it, I'm like, man, it makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Nobody thinks about that. You don't think about it. So
We need to finish this. We
that's
just
my,
need to get it
that's
done.
my 2 cents. I would get off the numbers and just identify it. Because you're mixing 2 different things. That's the trustees' problem.
Yeah,
You're the subcommittee trying to make the project. I'm gonna identify what we need, this is what we gotta do, this is how it's gonna work, so how we pay for it, I don't know, you guys will come up with that. Yeah, I mean, but you gotta think of it that way, I'm not trying to be smart about it. You're gonna get so clouded with the number that you will never get identified what you need. And I know the number's important, I remember what you said, but this is a different role that you're taking. And you just have to go with that one, figure out what your actual needs are, and do they make sense? And you're gonna be honest about it. It's
Right.
like the 2 parking spots, well, that was an economical decision. Realistically, we should pave the whole thing, so then there's not a maintenance problem.
I guess that one's always kind of perplexed me anyway, like, how do we solve the problem of the rain blotter, or whatever the deal is? you
Well,
know?
it's not a big deal.
It's not.
Just
It's
part of the
procedural,
design. It's
yeah.
just, you're scared about the term, or concerned about the term.
It's
of
something
storm
that's
water.
familiar.
It's a cost.
It's just a cost that goes into it, but it's no different than if you were putting a store there, they'd still have to do it. So,
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay,
So it won't be like
That's gonna
another
It's
be-
either,
$1 million.
that's
requi-
gonna-
it's either required or it's not.
That's gonna be the cheapest item on the list, probably.
Yeah, that's true
Okay.
too.
So.
Right.
you
So it's just
if you think of
drainage
it
or
that
In my
way.
mind, it sounded like it was gonna be like
Right.
$1 million just for the
Yeah, because of
stormwater
the
drainage.
terminology, it's like domestic engineer versus janitor. So, you know what I mean?
So consider when you're doing your schedule that I need to, I need probably, once I prepare the RFP, which, will take a little time, we like to post it and advertise it for 2 weeks.
okay,
Then we give them about 30 days to prepare their proposal.
Okay. They
And
kind of
that-
tell you the
and
intent.
then there will be a review period after that, probably, 2 weeks, depending when they come in and when the building committee meets.
So does that building committee would review them or in conjunction with the library, or how does that?
Correct. The way the bylaw reads is that a representative, during this project, most of the trustees came to all the building committee meetings.
Okay.
Okay? And I believe Joe Biagioni sat at the table and participated actively in the discussions.
Okay.
And so usually you have a representative from the project proponent participate, and they're a voting member of the building committee.
But not the architects would not be part of that.
The architect, no, they participate in the interviewing and the review of the application, or the proposals, and so they'd have a say in which one they recommend. And how they want to do it, it could be the individual, or they could, vote separately with the trustees and then act as the trustee vote on the
Okay.
building committee, however you guys want to do it.
Okay.
But they do get a vote at the table.
Okay.
And just for clarity, self-funding or not, it still has to go through this process.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
We're talking
But it
about
removes
different
how much-
scenarios.
So that's going to be a couple of
So
months, is my
I just
point.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Okay.
Right.
That's the threshold because of the cost
Yeah.
estimate.
I don't think that the next grant round for next November is a realistic goal. Can I just say that?
It does
It'll be like
seem
2021.
It's aggressive.
pretty impossible, but we could.
And again, that goes to the level of detail you need on an application. If it's
Yeah.
full construction drawings, then it might be tough. If it's concept, you can do it.
But then that would leave more work for us to do on the back end after the grant is awarded before we have to spend the money or they go away.
True.
So either way,
Yeah, you're better off having a full set of
Yeah.
drawings done. But I think if you
Let's shoot for
redefine-
2021.
Redefine what this is, there's a lot of detail in there that you're not gonna need.
Yeah.
But then there's other detail you may need. I don't even know if does it have sprinklers in it?
I don't believe so.
No.
There's sprinklers in there now. No?
No,
No? Oh, why did I think that they were?
no, it's just a leak in the roof.
And again, if this rises to a certain level, code compliance might be an
Right.
issue that needs to get looked at.
Right.
Meaning that could trigger
Could
the
expand
other
the
things in
scope,
the building
yes. No.
might need to be brought up to
Right, I
code.
think it's 100 occupants triggers the sprinkler.
I don't know.
I think so. I think that's what it was after that station house fire in '03 that
Yeah.
everybody got changed.
Yeah.
I have to go back to the library because I have to prepare documentation for tonight's trustee meeting,
Which is in
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
At least it'll be fresh in our minds.
Yes.
Yes. But thank y'all for
No,
taking
but I
the time
think
to
this
meet
was
with us.
productive. At least-
It-
Yeah,
I
definitely.
understand
Good starting
a lot
point.
more
A lot
now
more,
of the
yes.
process
A lot more.
and where y'all's minds are as engineer folk.
Yep.
Really? Is that a true statement? I don't think so.
Maybe I think I understand and I don't
probably
really, but like
I think he's a politician. He backed it
Yeah.
up very quickly.
you have to treat your job as a politician when you're a librarian.
That's
We
true.
serve at the will of the taxpayers, and we're always on the bottom of the totem pole whenever it comes to
Not a safety issue.
we're not a safety issue.
You're gonna keep
see y'all
these
at 20
so
copies?
much.
All right, Justin.
You should keep them so you don't lose them all.
I'm
Can
sure,
can we borrow one of these at least?
you
for
sure
this meeting?
can. I think the library does have a full set.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Okay.
do.
We can't meet at the library because it's not accessible. That's so ironic.
But I would love a copy of those plans
Oh, yeah.
to scan at some point.
Yeah. Do you want to just take them?
Those are in.
No, the full size, the full size.
Oh, the
This-
full size. That's
this
all I
one.
have. I don't have anything full size.
The full size set of this, I'd like to see.
Almost, not yet.
Oh yeah, I don't have those. Those came from Ellie.
Ellie gave me this.
Don't worry,
yeah.
I'll pay attention.
found them in.
I don't.
She found
I can ask her.
I would love to get it for my files, that's all.
Do you want these small ones?
I have those.
No, this small
I
one.
have that.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh. Okay.
Okay, so can we adjourn the meeting so we can send that little friend home?
Oh, yes. Meeting adjourned. Oh, wait a minute. How's it go?
Accept a motion to.
Motion to close the meeting of the subcommittee. All in favor? That's on the second.
So moved.
Second?
All those in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Aye.